Greetings, one and all, and I hope you're all having a very wonderful Friday the 13th. Except if you live in a part of the world where it's Saturday the 14th. Either way, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Just make sure to not walk under any ladders or break any mirrors or walk in front of a black cat, because all of the horrible things, although it's Friday the 13th, so I guess if you did those things, maybe it would be like double bad luck, so it would cancel out. It would either cancel out or be double the good luck you're getting, or maybe double the bad luck. I don't know. That's not a risk I'm willing to take. Although I do have a question for everybody out there that owns a black cat, because even as a kid, when people told me, like, don't walk in front of a black cat's path, that's bad luck, and I'm like, well, what about people that own black cats? Wait a second. Does every single person that own a black cat, their life is just full of unremittent misery and suffering? Because, like, every day they wake up and the black cat just walks in front of the hallway, and it's like, ah, crap, gonna have to walk in front of the path, and then, like, pots and pans are just falling on you, your house burns down. Is that just like every day of your life? I'm really sorry. But yeah, you own a cat though, so that's fun, right? Okay. Well, anyway, today we're going to be talking about Bartholomew Kuma. We learned a lot of stuff about Bartholomew Kuma in the last chapter 1095. So just spoilers for those that haven't read it yet, or if you're waiting for the official release. Okay, we good? All right. So I don't even really know where to start, because like this is I guess the beginning of Kuma's backstory. Every arc we essentially get one really sad backstory, you know what I mean? In Wano we had Odin's, and that one was particularly long for a One Piece flashback. Okay, so Wano was the longest arc of the entire story. I don't think Egghead is even going to be close to that, so I don't think this flashback's going to be as long, but definitely setting stuff up to see what was Kuma's childhood like, and this ties into God Valley. See, it all connects back together. That's always a guessing game with Oda, where it's like, okay, which character's backstory is going to connect back to all these other mysteries that we were wondering, okay? Like, Odin's tied into Roger and Laughtail in a really big way, and now we have Kuma's tying into not just the Revolutionary Army, not just his family in the Sorbet Kingdom, and Bonnie, obviously, but also with God Valley, which is therefore connects back to Rocks, which therefore connects to Garp and Roger. So yeah, it's all one thing. I would rather say it's one piece, but that would be a strange way to phrase it. So no, it's just one thing. Okay, all right. So yeah, Kuma was born 47 years ago in the Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue. Let's pause for a moment there. I was a little confused by this, because later it was revealed that Kuma was in fact the ruler of Sorbet. He was their king. So therefore I assumed that he got the position, through his family, because that's how kings become kings. Your dad is a king, and then they give birth to you. Well, your dad would have to have a little help from your mom, but then they give birth to you, and then you get raised up. You're a prince or a princess, and then you eventually become the next king or a queen. All right. Now, obviously, that is the way it has worked historically, and there's never any other deviation from that particular path. No, of course. So I just assumed that Kuma was, his dad was the king. All right, but and his name was Clap, Klap is the way that's translated right now. So Clap and his son Kuma. All right, just go along with that. But it really doesn't seem like Kuma's parents were royalty. I mean, they weren't wearing crowns. They weren't dressed super fancy. So the thing that was confusing me was like, oh, okay, so Kuma is born in the Sorbet Kingdom, and then he gets taken away by the Tenryubito to become a slave. And then at some point, he escapes the slaves, he escapes the Tenryubito and Marijua, and he goes back to the Sorbet Kingdom, and then establishes himself as the ruler of said kingdom. And that just, confused me, because it's like, okay, if a slave escapes from Marijua, that's like a big deal. Like, you saw the extent that they went to go and try to hunt down the slaves that escaped when Fisher Tiger raided the place, okay? Some of the Tenryubito, like Mulesguard, went all the way down to Fishman Island just to get their slaves back, all right? So, this is an egregious crime in the eyes of the Tenryubito. So I always found it strange of like, hey, that escaped slave, Kuma, the member of the Buccaneer Race, remember him? He's like, oh, yes, he escaped at God Valley. We must find him. Yeah, he's the king of Sorbet now. It's like, I mean, maybe the politics would get in the way there. Then again, Kuma was often his title, his epithet was the Tyrant. So the way that Bonnie explains it is that Kuma, her father, was always a very kind, loving man, and the rest of the world, and like Jinbei's image of Kuma, because Jinbei being a member of the Warlords, I'm sure Jinbei didn't have a lot of interaction with Kuma, but they probably met at least a couple of times, because Kuma was always the warlord that would always show up to the meetings. Whenever there's a warlord meeting, it was always guaranteed that he was going to be there. I remember when there was the warlord meeting after Crocodile was defeated, and the only people initially that were there were Doflamingo and Kuma. And I think Sengoku said something like, "Oh, 2 of the 7 are here. Well, that's one more than I thought was going to show up." So that implies to me that, like, and then Mihawk came later, and that was a big surprise. Like, oh, Mihawk's here as well. Well, 3 out of the 7. This is a good turnout here. That the way that Sengoku explained that, I always assumed that, like, Kuma's the only one that ever shows up to these, okay? So Doflamingo being there was a bit of a surprise, and Mihawk was a really big surprise. And if somebody like Moria or Boa showed up, that would even be more of like a, whoa, this is crazy, okay? So Kuma, I'm sure Jinbei and Kuma have met before, but Jinbei always had the image of Kuma as like this evil king of just like, oh, I am a malevolent dictator, whoa, like that was Kuma's tyrant epithet, all right? And he was also connected to the Revolutionary Army. There's so many bits and pieces with Kuma. We're finally getting to the moment in the story where we're going to be piecing this jigsaw puzzle together, and I'm so excited for that, okay? So, he was born in the Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue, I'm assuming to parents that were not royalty, and his father, Clap, was a member of the Buccaneer tribe, or the Buccaneer Race. Seems to be the way we're going with that, with the translations, with the way it's pronounced. We'll see if that changes at all, but we're going to go along with that right here. And like I said in the review, Buccaneers, they tie back to the Caribbean during the golden age of piracy. They were essentially French, or they were hired by the French to make trouble for the Spanish in that particular area. They were hired pirates. They were privateers. So Oda taking that name and being like, I will call this particular tribe of people the Buccaneers because One Piece is about pirates, and, Buccaneers are related to pirates and privateers. It makes sense to me, right? So in the context of One Piece, though, we don't know a lot about the Buccaneer race, but we do know they're very big, and they're strong, and they have giant blood in them. All right, which, wait a minute, pause for a second, back up here. We know a lot of characters in the One Piece world that are really big, okay? Some are bigger than others. Like, we got Big Mom and Kaido, but then we also have, like, Whitebeard. So I'm starting to wonder now, like, because the way I always explained this away was that, because there's, like, giants in the One Piece world, obviously the giants would intermingle with, like, humanity and stuff like that, like other tribes and other races and stuff like that. So, like, I would imagine, like, Whitebeard has giant blood in him. That's the reason Whitebeard's so big, okay? He's not giant size himself. He's actually not that big compared to, like, Kaido or Big Mom or anybody, but he's still a really tall dude, okay? So I would imagine, like, Whitebeard's, like, great-great-great-great-grandfather was a giant or something, and the blood carries down, and then now he's, like, a big dude, okay? That's the way I always explain that away. Same thing with Big Mom. I always explain that away with her as well. Kaido's, well, yeah, ancient giant, but still giant. Like, instead of a regular giant being his ancestor, it was the ancient giants. Like, Orz's race was Kaido's ancestors and Yamato's ancestor. That's the way I always explain that away, okay? So if that actually is the situation, and Whitebeard and Big Mom had giant blood in them, which is why they're so massive, maybe there is a name for that. Like, when you have giant blood in you, but you're not an actual full-fledged giant, you are a member of the Buccaneer race. We're going to get back to Big Mom here in a second, because there's actually something else that I want to bring up with her. But think of the Wotons, all right? Wotons, remember those? They don't show up that often in One Piece. There's only 2 examples, and I think only one of them is actually canon. But a Woton is a cross between a giant and a fishman, all right? So you had a giant daddy and a fishman mommy, okay? Or, vice versa. Anyway, you get a Wotan, all right? And so that's like a separate name for a race when two other races were the ones that, sired the child, I guess, okay? In the case with Wotans, the only examples we have are Big Pan, who is a member of Foxy's crew, which is why I don't remember them all that well, and then Sebastian, I think he might show up. Was he in 3D2Y? I think it was 3D2Y. There was like an OVA or some filler that he showed up in, okay? So there's not a lot of examples of that, okay? But that is an example, a canon example in the story of a hybrid race having a different name. Okay, so that might be the case with Buccaneers. When giants and a human get together and have a child, even maybe maybe not even like their direct descendants, like their children, but like, further down the line, they are still called Buccaneers, okay? So I'm going to go with that. So we know Clap was a Buccaneer, and so was Kuma, all right? Now, this is a particular tribe or race that has committed a sin in the One Piece world, as with like Zunisha and a lot of the other, races that existed, and it's mostly just because the Tenryubito are deeming like, yes, we are the rulers of the entire world. These particular races have transgressed against us. It's just like, yeah, they're a little biased here, I would say. I'm thinking these were the tribes that helped out Joy Boy, 800, 900 years back during the Void Century. And also, because Buccaneer does connect back to privateers and piracy, it might be the Buccaneers that might have been like the first pirates going out to sea. Like Joy Boy might have been the one to initially spark it. Joy Boy might actually pause for a moment, even more so. Joy Boy might have been a Buccaneer. Joy Boy's parents might have giant and a human, because we know Joy Boy was a big guy, because we have the giant straw hat that's in the freezer below Marijois Castle Pangea, right? So Joy Boy might have actually been a Buccaneer, and just by him being a Buccaneer in and of itself was enough for the entire race to be damned as soon as, the world government took over. So I'm going to go with that. But it might have been the other Buccaneers after Joy Boy died that they went off to become pirates. So that's like the origin point of pirate. Like pirate might have actually evolved from the word of Buccaneer, okay, in an interesting way. Not exactly how it worked in our world, but like there are connections. So there you go, okay? So Clap and Kuma are taken to Marijois, where they have to live as slaves. Here, we find out a lot about how slaves spread the story of the sun god, Nika. This was mentioned by Who's Who, where Who's Who says when he was imprisoned because he failed to get the Gumu Gumu no Mi, he was tossed in prison, and a lot of the slaves that were in prison cells would speak about the sun god and how he's going to come and save us, okay? Now, in the case with Kuma's father, Clap, he was like, doing the dance, doing the funny little dance of just like, oh, it's a drum beat, and it's like doom ta ta ta, doom ta ta ta. Yeah, that's how he does it. He dances, and it's fun. And so Kuma's father is trying to do the dance to cheer up Kuma after his mother passes away, okay? Because Kuma's mother was also brought with them. I feel like in that situation, I have a feeling, because Kuma's mother was just a regular human, she had the option to run if she wanted to. Clap even said, like, don't take my wife. She's not a Buccaneer. She's a human. Just take me. Leave my son and wife alone. I have a feeling that she could have gotten away if she wanted to, but she's like, I'm not leaving my husband and my son. I'm not doing that. So she went with them, and she eventually did end up passing away, and Kuma was very distraught by that. Probably the most impactful page, the panel from the last chapter, when Kuma hears about his mother dying, and he was trying to be tough, just like, oh, it's okay, Dad. I mean, my Tenryubito that owns me, he doesn't hit me that much, and he's trying to maintain, like, I could get through this, Dad. And then he learns about his mom, and he breaks down, and he just thinks it would be better off just to end it. And that's when Clap tells him, no, son, you cannot. You must live on no matter what. And just like, well, why? What's the point, And then so he's like, we're slaves at Tenryubito. Like, what are we going to do, Dad? And then that's when Clap tells him about Nika, and then a Tenryubito hears the noise, comes in, shoots Clap dead right in front of Kuma. So Kuma, like, at a moment where he was already distraught because his mother passed away, his dad is trying to cheer him up, and then just a door opens and he gets shot in the head right in front of him and then dies. So that's Kuma's backstory. And we're not even through the whole thing yet. Like, so then we go to God Valley. Okay, where that's going to be a separate video discussing God Valley and the tournament and Garling. We'll get to that in another installment. Tune in next time on Tekking Ball Z. Did you see they're making, like, Dragon Baby Z? Like, they're making, like, a chibi version of Dragon Ball? Okay, honestly, I'm kind of surprised it took them this long to get that. It just reminds me a lot of during this was before my time a little bit, but back in the 80s there was a thing of like, we're gonna do Flintstones but baby Flintstones, we're gonna do Scooby-Doo but baby Scooby-Doo, and so that was before I was around, but those shows would like air on syndication all the time, and now we're doing Dragon Ball Z but like chibi Dragon Ball Z, and I'm like, okay. All right, whatever. But anyway, where did I get distracted on that? I don't even know what the segue was. Anyway, God Valley. All right, separate video. We'll talk about that, okay? So, Kuma's at God Valley. This is where we see the flashback of him in the bubble room when Bonnie went into the memory bubble first, and we saw Kuma running away, and some of the other slaves were grabbing him and holding him down and just like, hey, if you run away, they're going to punish all of us. And by punish, we mean kill. So you're coming back whether you like it or not, all right? Because we don't want to die today. We want to have at least a chance of making it out of this, okay? So Kuma's like, no, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. And so that's the messed up thing. It's not even Tenryubito or the guards or the God's Knights that are dragging him back. It's the other slaves, because they're just like, hey, man, we might have a chance to survive or escape, but if you run away, they're just going to kill us all before the games even start, okay? So we're taking you back, and so Kuma's yelling and crying, and then that's when Bonnie was kicked out of the bubble because she just couldn't take the trauma. So I'm assuming she knows the whole story right now. In fact, we're probably learning this flashback from Bonnie's perspective, because Bonnie is in the middle of being held up by St. J. Garcia Saturn, about to get shot by all the Marines. And so they're going to like gun Bonnie down, and Bonnie is like reminiscing about her father, like life flashing before her eyes kind of a thing, which might actually be the thing of her life flashing before her eyes, like that term that's used, or it might be because of her devil fruit, because Bonnie's devil fruit has the ability to force near-death experiences on other people. And so maybe Bonnie's, an aspect of her fruit is like life flashing before my eyes, and she can like time can dilate and slow down right before she's about to die, and she can see everything. Okay, so might be something like that. I don't know. So Ivankov shows up at the last minute, and who is also a slave for the Tenryubito. Ivankov arrives and just like, I'm gonna save you, Kuma. It's just like, you're a buccaneer. I hear they have giant blood. I've decided I'm gonna live. How about you? Okay, so Ivankov's there, as well as Ivankov's younger sister, because Ivankov has a younger sister, and that is Jinny, all right, spelled Jinny, which is also, by the way, fun fact, a tie back to Friday the 13th, because the survivor girl in the second Friday the 13th movie is actually called Jinny. So, it all connects back. It's all one piece. Yes, that was the intention. Okay, anyway, in the review, I might have jumped the gun a little bit, and a lot of other people were like, that's Luffy's mom, because we really want to see Luffy's mom. Like, Luffy's mom is like one of the big mysteries of One Piece, but I think the more logical thing, and a lot of people pointed it out, was, Tekking, that's probably Bonnie's mom. That's probably Kuma. I was like, oh right, Kuma still needs to meet his wife at some point. Oh yeah, I forgot that's how that works. I'm like, okay, Bonnie could not have been created through sheer osmosis off of Kuma. Although, maybe she could have been, because cloning is a thing now. But no. Yeah, no, I'm assuming Kuma probably, meets his wife at some point, and future wife, and then they eventually grow up, and then, Bonnie is born. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes more sense. It's one of those things that is like a lot of One Piece theorists. It's like you're always looking for the big one, right? You're always looking for the big theory to crack the egg. Like, what's the giant egg on Roger's ship? Oh, I have it. It's just like, no. It's like, so that's Luffy's mom. It's a new character, and she's eating meat. Must be Luffy's mom. It's just like, no, it's Jinny, Jory, Bonnie. Okay, all right, yeah, it's Bonnie's mother. Okay, also, there was a thing that was brought up where Ivankov doesn't really know that Dragon has a family, and Ivankov is one of Dragon's like closest friends. So I think it might be a while yet until Dragon gets involved. He might get involved during God Valley, though. Who knows? Because it's Dragon, Kuma, and Ivankov that form the Freedom Fighters together. So this is definitely 100% where Ivankov and Kuma ended up meeting for the first time. So maybe they're gonna meet, and then they're all going to get away from God Valley in the ensuing chaos that's about to occur with Rox and Roger and Garp. And then Kuma and Ivankov and Jinny are going to probably maybe grow up together in the world as like fugitives from the world government. And, maybe eventually, they're going to grow up, and then, Kuma and Jinny are going to get together, and then they'll have Bonnie, and then they'll eventually, at some point, they got to move back to the Sorbet Kingdom, because that's where Bonnie did grow up. So they're going to move back to Sorbet. At some point, Jinny is going to die in a very sad way, because this is One Piece, and every mother has to die in a very tragic way. So we're going to have to see that at some point. We're going to see how Kuma is established as the tyrant. Because, like Bonnie's like, oh, my dad was a good ruler. And then the world government was like, he was evil. So it's very simple for, the government. It might be a thing where the government might have, I don't really know, because there's so many different pieces here. Like, how did Kuma join the revolutionaries, and then how did he join the warlords in that? Like, how did this all connect together? So I'm thinking it's possible that he goes back and becomes the king of Sorbet, and the world government knows he's the king of Sorbet, but they can't just go in and take him because now he's a king. And so they was like, oh wait, that's, he's an escaped slave, but he's also now the king somehow. So maybe they didn't know at first it was the same dude, and then they found out later. So then maybe at that point, maybe the world government attacks the entire, the kingdom, the Sorbet kingdom, and they kind of do the same thing that Doflamingo did to King Rikudol III, where they pin it on Kuma. Like, Kuma was the one that ravaged your town, and now he's a member of the filthy revolutionaries, So it might have been something like that, and so maybe population then starts to turn on Kuma and be like, oh, we thought he was a nice ruler, but he was really a bastard. He burned down our whole town. It might have been something like that. The world government just pins it on Kuma. So Kuma goes off to be a revolutionary full time, and that's when we get like the Gray Terminal and like Luffy's backstory and everything like that. And then eventually there's some point where I think Kuma willingly turns himself over to the government to become a warlord and then experimented on by Vegapunk. Like, that was planned or something by Dragon. Like, Dragon's aware of this. You know what I mean? So, yeah, there's still a lot of pieces to know about this, but we're putting this puzzle together one piece at a time. Something else about Big Mom that I wanted to bring up, though, before I forget, was Big Mom had a line during Wano when she met King, and she said that all of the races of the world have come together in Totland, save for 3. Okay, and she mentioned that King's race was one of those races. Now, King was a Lunarian and might very well be the last Lunarian in the entire world. There are the Seraphim, but those are artificial. Those are made from King's DNA. Okay, so King might be the only one left. Okay, so there were no Lunarians in Totland. We're also aware there were no giants in Totland, because that was a big plot point, so because the giants hate Big Mom, right? Now, you could immediately say the third race that Big Mom was referring to was the Buccaneer Race. You could just say that. However, I'm not entirely sold on that, because number one, Big Mom herself might be a Buccaneer, okay? Because she's a big lady. She's a big ma'am, all right? So maybe she has giant blood in her, okay? Probably maybe one of the reasons why her parents threw her off, like Operation Beached Whale. That might have been one of the reasons. Wait a second. They dropped off Big Mom on Elbaf. Now, the reason for that was because they heard about Mother Caramel being on the island and caring for all the orphans of the world. Okay, maybe. But what if her parents figured out, like, through the blood test, like, oh, crap, she's a Buccaneer. If we leave her on our town... I mean, Big Mom did destroy the town as well. Like, they couldn't feed her because she was, like, rampaging and stuff. But it's like, that might have been another reason. And it might be like, wait a second, she's a Buccaneer. The government's going to be looking for her. How about we just dump her off on the giant island? Because giants... It might have actually been a mercy for her a little bit. It might have been like, okay, if she stays on the home island... and then she gets found out by the government, then we're all gonna get punished for that. But if she is a Buccaneer, that means she has giant blood. Well, let's leave her with the giants, so maybe they'll take care of her, because the giants can maybe fight against the government. So maybe something like that, or maybe Big Mom just had shitty parents. That's probably the most likely thing. Now, Big Mom's parents were not Buccaneers, and they were regular humans. But I'm not thinking that, like, just because the way it was kind of described, just because Clap was a Buccaneer does not guarantee that his son was going to be one, or vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, it might skip generations. It might be in the blood, and it's going to be like, oh, your great-grandfather was a Buccaneer. It skipped your grandfather and your father, but then, boom, you become one. It's like, it might be something like that, okay? So Big Mom herself might be a Buccaneer, so that might count for, that in Totland. We didn't see any members of, we didn't see any Skypians or Bjerkins or Shandorians or any Sky races during Totland. So I'm still I'm still a little bit hesitant on that because, we're by the way, we just got introduced to a new race, like, just now, like the Buccaneers that were never really referenced up until now, right? So, yeah, I'm still going to say, because we haven't seen any sky people living in Totland, maybe that was the last one Big Mom was referring to, if she's even aware of their existence, but Big Mom has this huge information network. I think she would be aware that Sky Islands exist, you know? So, maybe that's the situation there, but I just wanted to bring that up because that is something Big Mom references during Wano. But anyway, yeah, that's the video. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Later today, because today is Friday the 13th, later today, I am going to be doing a Friday the 13th horror movie discussion stream kind of thing with Too Spooky. You know Too Spooky. We've collabed before. We're on One Piece D&D together. I think that's going to be on his Twitch, but I follow my Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called now. I'll put a link there later today when we do a stream. So we're going to be doing that later. That'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, for right now, I'm going to say goodbye. But wait, I'm not, because we have zebra facts. In fact, Alejandro made a fantastic final intro for Animal Facts. It's full of so many memories. Take it away. Yeah, okay. So just follow me on this, okay? Zebra facts, zebra facts. I'm so glad this is almost done. We're on zebra facts. Oh my goodness. Remember that time I talked about ants, and then I talked about bats, and then I talked about capybaras, and then I talked about elephants, and then I talked about, okay, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Zebra facts. Okay, so zebras are part of the family of Equidae. Equidae, all right? That's my favorite holiday, Equidae, all right? It's the holiday where we celebrate horses. Anyway, there's only 3 members of the family of Equidae. There are horses, nay. There are asses, the donkeys, and then there are zebras, okay? That's all you get. You got zebras, you got donkeys, and then you got horses, and everything else is kind of connected to those, like ponies are connected to horses and stuff, okay? So, anyway, there are some differences, key differences, though. For one thing, zebras' bodies did not evolve to carry a lot of weight on top of them. So if you have a question of, like, how come humans didn't ride zebras, like, in Africa or anything like that? Like, zebras were right there. CGP Grey did a really interesting video discussing this, so go check that out. But suffice to say, zebras are a little bit more violent. They will, like, bite and kick a lot more, but also just, you can't really ride on top of them. That would cause intense pain for the zebra. So on top of them not really liking it's just impractical, okay? So yeah, don't try to ride a zebra. So they have stripes, which, fun fact, did you know zebras have always 13 stripes across their body for Friday the 13th? That is not true. That is not an accurate zebra fact. That is the first time on Zebra Facts I gave a fact that's not accurate. 26 of these, and that was the first time that I came up with a wrong fact. Anyway, they got the stripes, though. Now, are zebras white with black stripes, or are they black with white stripes? That's another mystery that'll just never be solved. But the idea is the reason they have stripes is it's a deterrent for flies, because living in Africa, there's a lot of really big-ass insects that'll, like, bite and sting you. And so I guess having that pattern might, like, deter certain fly species from attacking the zebras. Does it work? I don't know, but that's the leading theory. They're primarily grazers, and they can actually subsist on some very low amounts of vegetation in order to survive. They're mostly in eastern and southern Africa, that particular region of the continent there. But yeah, I think that's good enough for Zebra Facts today. We could lead it on with that. I could talk about Madagascar at some point with Eddie Murphy playing Marty the zebra. That's a good character. We could talk about that. We could do a couple of Zebra Facts before we end this out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Teching signing out. Happy Friday the 13th. Whoa.